Hi, I'm Dr. Allison EES in Earth and Environmental Science. I am the undergraduate advisor for the geology and environmental science majors. And I'd like to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about tips that I give to my students in EES classes to help them to be successful in navigating through the class, taking exams, and potentially then moving on in one of our majors if that happens to align with your interests. One of the things that I tell my students on the first day of class and in my intro level classes, there's a part on the syllabus that says my tips for success at no additional charge, is that really focusing on being present in class. Obviously attendance is important, but that while you're in class, being present and engaged with the material. That taking notes in class is not simply a matter of copying down word for word things that are on my PowerPoint slides or that I might write on the boards in class, but really trying to get a little bit more at what the concepts are that we are talking about in class. In a lot of ways, it's less important in my classes and in a lot of our intro level classes to make sure that you get everything written down, because a lot of the material is in the textbooks or on the slides that myself and many of the professors will post for you on Blackboard. But to start putting in your notes ways that all of these things connect together. What's the big picture? What's the concepts that we are trying to get across that go beyond just memorizing terms and jargon and the language of the discipline? It's a little bit individualized how different students deal with that, but really a key to taking successful notes or successfully using your notes in most of our classes is not to take the notes in class and then wait several weeks until before the exam and then start reading over your notes. Material comes at you quickly during class time. And very often you may think that you're taking completely legible and understandable notes, but in reality, your brain's moved on to the next thing as you've started writing. You've got half-written words and abbreviations that make sense at the time. If you go back to it 3 weeks later, you might be looking at this and saying, what in the world was I trying to write here? So one of the things I tell my students is make sure you read over your notes each day after class, or at least before the next class period, if whatever's going on in your other classes means you can't get to it immediately. Don't let this pile up. What that allows you to do is, while it's still fresh in your mind, go through and clarify in your notes things that you might have just abbreviated. It also allows you to catch things in your notes that you might not really understand when you can either ask a question in class the next class period before we go on in the material, or talk to your instructor during office hours or your lab instructors and try to get clarification before confusion builds on itself as the class goes on. In terms of success on exams and studying for exams from your notes or from the textbook in my classes, one of the major things I like to tell students is it's not just about reading your notes over. That's the thing that you want to do after each class period to make sure you understand what's in your notes, to refresh your memory. But it's very easy to get tunnel vision if your methods of studying are just reading and rereading over what you have written down. You get very used to seeing material coming at you in a specific fashion that way. So if the material is presented differently on an exam, you might have some difficulty dealing with it. It might be difficult to take what you recall from your studying and apply it in a slightly different setting. And I've seen students, particularly in intro classes, run into these problems on exams. So what I try to do is, if I give study guides for many of my exams, I say to approach the study guide, or if you're in a class where you're not getting a study guide, use review questions at the end of chapters and textbooks and things like that. And approach it almost like an essay exam or a short answer exam. Don't just look up the answers. Try and see if you can answer the questions. And I stress writing this out. Now, writing it out can mean longhand on paper, or it can mean typing it up on your computer, your tablet, whatever. However your brain works better. But don't just think it in your brain. the actual act of having to write these things out and then going back and checking it against your notes and going back and checking it against the material in the textbook is going to give you practice not only in recalling and understanding the material, but in applying the material in a little bit of a different fashion than what might actually be in your notes. And I found that students who approach studying for exams this way tend to do better, at least on my exams, than students who don't. It takes a little bit more time during the study process, but it definitely has a payoff in the long run. I also like to tell students not to panic during exams. I know that sounds a little simplistic. My upper level students are used to hearing my mantra, which is basically fear is good, panic is bad. It's good to have a healthy respect for the material and understand that, yeah, an exam is going to be a stressful situation. But the minute you cross the line into panic, your brain's going to shut down and you're going to forget everything you studied. So just taking a deep breath and approaching things in a calm and logical fashion, easier said than done, I understand that, but it is probably the best way to approach a test-taking situation. I tell my students at all levels, take your time, read the instructions, because it's very easy to lose points if you're answering a question that is different from what I'm actually asking you. And don't leave things blank, particularly on short answer questions or multiple choice questions. Because if you leave it blank, you're automatically going to get it wrong. If you try to come up with something, you may be more right than you think you are and will probably get partial credit on something. And I can't stress enough, don't leave things blank. It's really, you probably know more than you think you know, so put something down there. Finally, sort of my overall biggest tip for success in EES courses: use your professors. Use our office hours, use any time that you have to ask questions. I've had people tell me I didn't want to come to your office hours because I thought I would be bothering you. I have office hours for a reason. We all have office hours for a reason. It's to interface with students. We don't want people keeping quiet about concerns, confusions, problems, and then having it come around after exams where they've done poorly and now have to make up for this. We want to deal with any confusion, any questions, any concerns that you might have when they come up. So constant communication with your professors as the semester is going on is really key to success. And I think, and again, initially beginning students, sometimes I find there's a reluctance to engage that way because they think they're going to be bothering us, and that could not be further from the truth. And I really would encourage students to take the initiative. It generally tends to pay off with better grades and better retention of information.